Schools Work podcast, a podcast for everyone in education. This show is brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. At SREB, we believe that every school has the potential to be great. Whatever you do in the school, whatever your job may be, let's talk about things that make schools work.
Welcome back to the SREB Making Schools Work podcast. I'm Daniel Rock, Senior Instructional Coach at SREB, and I am joined by Erin Anderson Williams, Senior Leadership Coach at SREB. How are you today, Erin?
I am doing great. Looking forward to this awesome conversation.
It's going to be wonderful. Erin, you tell us a little bit about sort of your focus and what are some of the places you travel to and types of schools you work at right now.
Sure. My biggest focus is in career academies and supporting schools in transforming and connecting careers to academic life for students so that when they graduate, they have a clear focus and direction of where they're wanting to go and what they're wanting to do to contribute. So I spend a lot of time in Delaware, New York, and Maryland. My home base is in Nashville, but I also will go all the way to New Mexico to support the work across the nation. So really exciting work.
Erin, you're going to be joining us for a series in which we feature our Making Schools Work featured presenters. These are people who, through distinct work that they've done in the field, through previous presentations that they've done, that we are highlighting, and we provide a special invitation and really feel that are powerful presenters that we highly recommend folks go to and check out at our conference. And we're going to be talking to them, and we're not going to simply listen to what the same thing they're going to do in their sessions, but we're going to do a sort of supplementary exploration of the ideas and themes and hear more about what they have learned and what they share, and people can hear about and understand some of the big ideas that they're presenting on. Today, we're going to talk to Marck Abraham. Marck Abraham has worked at just about every level of education, youth services. He started out as a community mentor and went on to roles in probation work, in-home therapy, school counseling, and school leadership. He was a principal in Buffalo, New York, and he helped drive major gains and graduation rates. He moved the overall rate from 60% to 87%. And what's really interesting is he had 93% for Black male students, which we know is a gap in achievement. Black males across the country has been a real challenge. So that's something that we're going to hear a little bit about today. Now he's the CEO of MEA Consultant Services, and he goes to districts and organizations across the country like the Obama Foundation. He's a regular featured presenter at SREB. He goes to a variety of school districts and schools and organizations focusing on building strong culture, data-driven improvement, and leadership development. He's the author of 2 books, and he's published more than 7 articles in NASSP. And he's a regular across the country at conferences, and he's a featured presenter in many different places. All right, let's bring him in. Dr. Marck Abraham, thank you for joining our podcast today.
Family, thank you for having me. I'm a fan of SREB, and funny thing is, SREB, when I was assistant principal, you guys came into my school. Because I always say this, we all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, right? And I just want to give SREB your flowers right now. I had a consultant. Our school was like facing receivership, like state takeover. We had that 60% graduation rate. We were hovering around that every year. And so we consulted with SRB, and him and his team, and because we were doing big school, we had a big school, 1,300 kids, we're making it to a small school. And you guys had a consultant, Dr. Wendy Gonzalez. And my principal was a veteran principal. And so she showed me all of like the structures, like discipline and keeping things in order. But SRB showed me how do you lead a professional development with regards to intertwining project-based learning into all the instructional skills? How do you strategically look at data and have data drive your conversation and everything? So when we say, hey, Dr. Abraham took the graduation rate from 60% to 87% and 93% for Black males, one of the highest in the country. And then now he goes around the country supporting principals and coaching principals and mentoring them. And by the way, 100% in every one of the schools from Anchorage, Alaska, all the way down to South Florida that I've worked with, all of the schools have increased in attendance, decreased negative behavior, increased test scores, increased graduation rates. I'm batting at 100%. Now I'm so nervous. I don't even want to take on clients if I was like, I don't mess up my rep. But anyway, you guys were so impactful in my growth as an administrator. And from that experience at SRB, I realized how important it is to have mentors and coaches that have done the work, not people talking theoretically. Not people talking like, I think this is going to work. Folks who actually have done it, that can stand flat-footed with you and say, I promise you, if you follow this recipe, you're going to get the results that you're looking for. So you asked me a question. I don't know if I answered it, but I just wanted to give you your flowers.
We should end the podcast right here. I think that was all we needed.
We love that. Thank you for the flowers. We're here to help support. And that's also what this podcast is for, to get people to just see the wonderful and amazing things that are happening out in the field, to invite them to come to our conference, but also to get them to hopefully come to your session and hear the things that you talk about. And you always bring the fire about culture. And so we're looking forward to getting into this conversation.
I would say to any school leader right now, just from my testimony, you don't have to feel hopeless. Like there's a way to move the needle for your building if you focus on the right things, and you have to be strategic. And we'll talk about culture, and I can't wait to get into it. But I don't want you guys to think of culture as this mystical thing that you can't really control or impact, because the research tells us one thing that is very clear. Principals are their biggest responsibility is safety and culture. But culture is not just, oh yeah, everybody feels good coming here. No, that's not what we're talking about. Culture is simply, in my mind, the norms and values of the community, of the school, right? It's like, what do we value? What's important to us? What is the thing that is espoused? What are the things we talk about consistently in the building? Now, what I tell principals, because I have a model called the success model, and there's 10 steps. It's in my book, What Success Looks Like, Increasing Graduation Rates for Young Men of Color. I talk about culture in this. I say, hey, it's the norms and values, but we need to create a culture of love. And then people get all mushy and think that I mean like, oh yeah, we just pat kids on the head and tell them we love them. No, that's not what I'm talking about. When I say culture of love, high expectations, holding young people accountable, holding ourselves accountable to do the work so that our students actually achieve academic success. Oh man, I'm getting excited talking about this. But listen, so if you love me, if you really love me, you make sure that I'm good. I was talking about this before we got on this call, and I said, hey, if you go to let's say you go to a mechanic shop, Erin, and the mechanic, when you walk in the room, he gives you a hug, gives you some donuts. Your car is messed up. He brings the car in, tells you, hey, I'm happy to see you. He knows your name. He knows everything about you. You pay him your money, and then when you walk out of there, your car is still not fixed. Even though he did all the nice things to make you feel good, it felt like love. But the true acid test of love was my car actually fixed when I left out of that mechanic shop. What does that mean for education? The true acid test of love is when your students leave out of your building, will they be proficient in reading? Will they be proficient in math? Will they graduate? Will they have an opportunity to go into a trade school, four-year university, military, or the world of work? What happens when your children actually leave out of your building? That's the true acid test of, do you actually love it? So love is not just, oh, I'm just making kids feel good, or, hey, I know this kid doesn't have a father at home and I just feel so bad for him. So I pat him on the back and give him some food and tell him, oh, I'm happy to see you. And the expectations are low. Expectations are high when you love them, because I believe in you. I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to make sure that when you walk out of here, you are better. I don't care what level you came in, level 0, level -1. When you leave out of here, I promise you, you're going to be better than you came.
That's love.
But love, you do work though, right? Like, so I tell teachers this all the time, like, if you got a lesson plan from 1992, you don't love me. You're like, I want you to use this again. This still good. No, you don't love me, because you're not doing the extra work necessary to make sure that I'm good. And the same thing for a principal. If you're not doing walkthroughs, if you're not examining data, if you're not having what I call courageous conversations with your staff, if you're not holding your children accountable to be there on time and get to class on time, if you're not doing those things, then you have to really question, do you actually love the students that you say you serve?
Or the teachers. I see that, yeah, from the perspective of the leadership, a culture of love towards your teachers would mean holding your teachers accountable and setting expectations. This is what we expect. Because what I heard you say was the culture is what we value and what's important to us. And so I'm just thinking, if you value everything, then it's nothing if you make everything important. And our school, if you define this level of instruction is critical, and this is what we're going to talk about all the time, and data is critical, and that's going to be something that we focus on. That's your culture. You can build a culture around those types of things. And a culture of love means result, right? It's focusing on results as much as you're focusing on process and what's happening during the class. Well, I'm wondering about some of the ways you put that into action. I heard you say high expectations. I heard you say accountability. What are some strategies or practical ways you think leaders can develop a high expectation and accountability in their school, or through the culture that built a culture of love in the school?
Yes. So I'm going to try to tease out what you're asking me and break it down. Number one, the strategy has to be messaging, right? I do this with principals. When I go into their building, I say, hey, assistant principal, leadership coach, lead teacher, whoever's in their cabinet, I want you to write down what the principal's focus is for this year and their vision. And I have every one of them write it down, and I say, principal, you write it down. And then I look at them, and then we have a conversation about it. Most times, the leadership team is completely disjointed. One person thinks one thing, another person thinks another thing, another person thinks another thing. And I always say, they say, well, kind of close. I said, well, if you're kind of close, you're not going to hit the mark. See, for your culture to be driven, it needs to be driven by clear communication. What is it that's important? And it needs to be stated over and over and over and over again, where people understand exactly the direction that you're going in, exactly what's important. So number one, principals, if you're watching this, you have to have a clear message. At our school, we believe in X, Y, and Z. At our school, we're going to focus on this and this. And let that be the messaging that you use all the time. I call it your theme. What is your theme for the school year? What is your academic goals for the school year? So number one is having clear messaging that everybody knows what's important to you. Number two, which goes into my first step in my book, is data dominates, or know your data. For you to have a high performing culture, a culture of accountability, you have to first figure out, what is your data telling you? Now, when I look at data and examine data, and I talk about this all the time, I've written articles about this. I look at data in 3 buckets, the ABCs: attendance, behavior, course passing data. And for a principal, you're going to have to be intimately aware of where your data is, how you're performing, so that you can have intellectual conversations with your teachers. So you can say, hey, Miss Teacher, Here's your current attendance rate. Here's your attendance rate for your students. Here's how many referrals you have given us this year. And here's how you're performing in the last 3 years on the state assessment. And your iReady data right now, you're performing at this rate. Your course passing data, you're performing this way. And here's where we need to make improvement. Those are ways that you hold people accountable, because the accountability is not subjective. The accountability needs to be very objective. The accountability can't be emotional and all of these different type of feelings we want to bring to the work. It has to really be on the work. What is your data telling you? And how do we move this data forward? Let that be your focus. So those are a few ways that you create this culture. Messaging, knowing your data, setting high realistic goals for teachers, and then saying, hey, I'm going to coach you to make sure that you get there, versus get there because I told you, or I'm mad at you, or all this other drama that people want to do. When you have that type of culture, that's a success culture. That's a culture of love. That's a culture of accountability.
I'm thinking about messaging, and messaging isn't just about words, right? Messaging is about showing up. Do you make it a priority to have an administrator at PLC data meetings? To me, that's a form of messaging. Are you in classrooms regularly? That's a form of messaging, right? Are you giving feedback on the things that are important to you? Are you reviewing lesson plans?
For any of my school leaders, depending on the size of your building, there has to be focus versus time. I wrote an article called Focus versus Time. And what happens is, for most new principals, what they try to do is they try to go from principal seat to student seat. Like, they're trying to impact students and their staffs, right? So if you're a principal and you have assistant principals in a cabinet, and then you have teachers, and then you have students, if you kind of think of it in that hierarchy, right? You may not have the physical time to do what that principal did, because you have so many other things that you got going on that you're trying to manage. But that does not mean you do not have systems in place to get that done, because that's your priority. So you might not see me as the principal in your classroom every day, but you'll see my designee in the classroom. You might not see me all the time leading a PLC, but you'll see my designee leading a PLC, and their job, depending on the size of the building, because you got schools of 1,800, 2,500 kids, that's a big organization. That's like a little city. And so what you have to do is to work through your staff. Because remember, principals have an indirect impact on student achievement. What does that mean? We're not the ones in front of kids every single day, but we impact student achievement by what we do. And so I just want to tell principals, I always say, try to stay on the balcony versus always trying to be on the dance floor, because at the balcony, you can see what's going on. Man, I really want to give a whole culture session. And so right now, when you're working through your assistant principals, and tell me if this is making sense to y'all, your assistant principals have to have a charge. Then that charge has to be rooted and grounded in expectations and instruction. But that means you got to check lesson plans, yes. You got to go into those classrooms, yes. But again, it might not be the principal all the time, but her designee needs to be there, because if you don't see the principal, you still see them, and them represent me. Go ahead, Erin. I know you have something to say.
I love it, because even as you're talking about clear messaging, and then also the principal leader having that indirect impact, the key to culture is that there is a clear alignment between what we say is important and what we do that's important.
Right.
And so closing the gap, even with the clear messaging, if lesson planning, quality lesson planning is of high value to us, and we say that, then we should see that in the through line of what everybody does. Okay, principal says lesson plans are important. Okay, teachers, I need you to write them. Great. But then we never talk about them.
Right.
Or we go into a classroom and we can't see them, or we spend too much time checking them, but not aligning them to the delivery of instruction. The plan is just a plan. So when we talk culture, it's also the alignment of what we say and what we really mean, and what we do and what we really do.
Right.
Sometimes we say something's of value, but it doesn't show up in our actions. We really value data, but we don't look at it. We don't talk about it. We don't review it. We don't adjust because of it. Then we have to question, is data really part of our results culture?
Right.
I love what you're saying about the messaging and also that direct and indirect impact, because everyone has a role. So really, in our culture, if we're talking high expectations, we expect students to learn here. Everyone has a part and a piece to play in that.
This is why I always struggle with SIP plans, school improvement plans, because I'm always like, you guys just put 1,700 goals on this thing, and no one knows what the goals are. So you submitted this paperwork to the state and said, this is our priority. But if I ask each and one of your teachers, give me 15 of those 35 goals you put on that school improvement plan, no one can give you no answer. So is it really your priority? Right. Is it really your focus? Or is it something you just did for compliance sake? Now, I'm not telling you to don't do your school improvement plan, Daniel. I've seen your thing. I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm saying this is why it's concept.
They're doing it. Well, unfortunately, it's tied to money, right? They use that so that they can get the school improvement money. We have to show how each thing is tied to this and that. What you're saying is, do the school improvement plan, make it part of your school culture, make people know it. The school improvement plan should represent your why. Why are we doing these things we're doing? Because we've said as a school that if we do these things, they'll lead to success. And if no one knows it, then it's just compliance. It's just to get the cash.
Exactly.
It's not a system. I want to look at dig into data a little bit.
Thank you, Dan, because he was like, hey, don't get us in trouble. No, I wasn't beating against it. I said,
you're 100% right.
If it does not become a real document that you're using to drive your everyday conversation.
And as a coach, as an instructional coach, leadership coach in a school, that document should be the thing that guides what we do in terms of who we work with, how we work with them. And so people have to know it. Because then why do you keep talking to me about this? It's in our school improvement plan, right? It can be a powerful thing. You talked about data, and you said that a lot of schools are data rich and decision poor, and that you want to focus on the information that drives instructional improvement. And the three things you mentioned earlier were the ABCs: behavior and course passing. Can you talk about that journey from being data rich, decision poor to being data rich and decision rich? So you can just lap up the wealth and have no poverty in your decisions?
We have so many data systems right now, right? You got data to collect this, data to collect that, data. And you have all of these different data points, but then sometimes with so much data, principals and teams become overwhelmed, right? I have all of these data sets. What should I focus on? What should be my priority? Yeah, the attendance is down, the graduation is down, the chronic absentee is down, behaviors are out of control. We got this going on, that going on. How do I get a handle on this, right? And so what I say to principals is we get a handle on this by doing this. We look at our attendance, and what I want you to understand that when I say the ABCs, it's not this way. It's not linear, right? It's not going A, B, C.
It's not A, then B, then C.
It's continual. It's like a circle, right? Because all of those are connected to one another, and all of those impact one another. So attendance. When I look at attendance, I look at teacher attendance and student attendance. See, but Dr. Abraham, why are you looking at teacher attendance? Because teacher attendance gives you an indication of the culture of your building. If your teachers, because you know what we want to say is, man, these teachers are lazy. Let me just tell you, if you're blaming everybody for your failure, you are the failure. Winning programs and winning people, they own it. No matter if it's good or bad, they're going to own it. So if it's failing, it's on me, right? I'm going to own it as a leader. I promise you I'll be nice if I come to your city. But if you're one of those leaders that your school is chronically failing, you've been failing for the last 5-6 years, and you're blaming everybody that I got the bad teachers, the kids, the parents, and blah, blah, blah. You're the failure. You're the one that's causing us to fail. See, when we look at our teacher attendance, it tells us what kind of culture have we produced in our building. Because people vote with their feet. Listen, Erin, listen, let me tell you this. I had a principal I worked for. I hated him and he hated me. I took all of my sick days and vacation days. I took smoke breaks. I didn't even smoke. I was just outside like, I can't wait to leave this job, right? Because I didn't like being there. I didn't value. So I tell people, you have to understand teacher attendance. Then you have to understand student attendance. Do your children want to come here? I see some schools with 60% attendance rate. That's crazy to me, right? But that means that speaks to, do people feel valued? Do they feel loved? Do they feel appreciated? Do they feel seen? Do they feel heard? Do they matter? When they walk into the building, do you say, hey, man, take all the stuff out your pockets, man. Do you put your together? Or do you say, hey, good morning. I'm happy that you made it here today. Hey, man, hey, listen, I know you're going to have an amazing day. See, that's culture. There's high expectation, but the expectation is that I'm seeing everybody. Number two thing is behaviors. When you look at the behaviors, what are the behaviors that are spiking in your building? Is it, because the people that say stuff like, well, we got a vaping problem. We got a drug problem. And they say, well, how you got 100 kids. How many kids are vaping? We had 3 kids vape this month, but you had 70 kids skip first period class. So really, what's the behavior problem? Is it vaping or is it skipping? Right? The vaping might cause you more problem and the skipping you shy away from, but your real problem is there's no sense of urgency to get to the class. What is the reason for that? Number 3, and this is the big one. All of them are big, but this is really where we get into the nuts and bolts of things. You have to look at your course passing data. Course passing data is broken up in 3 ways. Well, 4 ways, 5 ways. Let's talk about it. Course passing data is, how are the students performing in the class? Like, what grades are they getting? It blows my mind when I speak to principals who don't do report card audits. They don't sit down and look at the report cards before it goes out into the community. They don't know the percentage of how their teachers are performing. Why do you say how the teacher performing? They mean the students performing? Absolutely not. The course passing data is a reflection of the teacher in that class. And literally, I see some teachers have a 30% course passing data. I had a teacher have a 30% course passing data one time. And principals don't do this. Dr. Abraham was a little bit more fiery back in the day when the early 30s. And I said, there's a teacher here that got the worst course passing data I've ever seen in my life. I agree. She was so mad at me. She said I called her out. I didn't call her out. I just said there is a person in this organization that has a 30% course passing data, right? Because for me, 30% says 3 out of 10 of your kids are going to pass. And that was an ELA class. What happens if that data persists throughout the school year? That means I have 70% of my students that are going to either have to go to summer school or not be prepared to go to the next level. So I got to know the course passing data. Secondly, I need to know my DBAs. What's a DBA? District Benchmark Assessment. You guys know in education, we love acronyms, boy. PLC, DBA, MEA, CSI. TBI, you didn't say anything, right? We love acronyms. So we have to know our DBAs, a district benchmark assessment. What is your district benchmark assessment? Is it iReady? Is it Linkage? Whatever it is, there's an assessment tool more than likely that the district has paid for to give you an understanding of how your students are trending. The third one is state assessment data. How does your teachers, how did Mr. Daniel do for the last 3 to 4 years in the state assessment? What are the percentage of his students that actually pass the PSATs, who actually pass the ELA exam for the state? What's the percentage of kids that actually pass it? Now, here's the next one. Walkthrough data. Walkthrough data using a rubric that gives you an understanding of what good instruction looks like. School leaders, telling this to your teacher is of no consequence. It does nothing. Well, when I was a teacher, this is how I used to do it. Okay, bravo. That's how you did it. That doesn't do anything for me.
Yes.
Exactly. What I want to know is, what is Danielson rubric saying? What is the rubric that's smarter than us, that's bigger than us? We don't take a professorial role as principals like we have all the answers. No, we say, hey, There are organizations that said this is the standard for good instruction. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to go look at that rubric and say, is this the standard for that's happening in your classroom? And then that's what we're going to have our conversation from. I gave you 3 different data sets in 3 different buckets, broken down in several different ways. Now that gives you an understanding of the kids feel value. Are they coming to school? How are their behaviors? How do they perform in the course? How do they perform on the state? How do they perform in our DBAs? What am I seeing when I do the walkthroughs? And then once you have all that data and you put it aside, now you're going to start being able to make decisions and saying, this is what I need to focus on based off of what this data is saying. If kids aren't coming to school, that needs to be your priority. If kids are coming to school at an 87, 88% rate and you're trying to get it to 92%, that should be a focus, but that ain't your main priority if you have a 30% proficiency on the state assessment. Because if you had 80% of your kids passing the state assessment, like you have 80% attendance, you'll be a blue ribbon school, one of the best schools in the country. So you have to see what the data is saying to say, where's going to be my priority? And once I know what the data is saying over not just 10 months, 2-3 years to give me a trend, then it gives me a clear understanding. And last piece, remember, principals, you have new students coming into your building every year. So if your data is stagnant and remains the same, it's not a kid issue, it's an adult issue. If you've been trending at 40% for the last 4 years, you got new students. So how is it the kids? It's the adult,
Right.
It's how we're performing.
I'm listening to what you're saying, and it all is true. I'm thinking about how teachers would respond to you as a principal saying these things. And one thing I can hear them saying, especially around course passing rate, Dr. Abraham, these kids aren't motivated. I've got a group of kids who don't care. I want to hold them accountable. So when my principal starts yelling at me about my course passing rate, I'm trying to hold them accountable. They're not doing the work. They're not doing their assignments. They're not caring about their grades. And it's my fault that the course passing rate is wrong. Now, this is what I would hear a teacher saying in response to a principal who's trying to make that a thing. I'm just wondering, because I am blaming the kids as the teacher. And so how do you respond to that teacher who's saying, I'm trying to hold them accountable for their learning?
What happens is when we're holding the kids accountable, we're beating on the kids, everybody's happy. And yeah, that's the school. They keep those kids in line over there. When we start holding adults accountable, that's when things start to get uncomfortable for everybody. Because now it's like, well, why are you picking on me? I'm not picking on you. Here's the thing, principal. We're hard on the data, soft on the person. I'm not beating you down, but I do want that data to move, and I do have an expectation that my students will pass. Well, to the point of students not being motivated, hey, I took the horse to water, but I couldn't make them drink. But if you run that horse long enough and you take them to water, you're going to make them thirsty enough, and that horse is going to drink automatically. So it's not about making excuses and explanations. What I'm saying is I need results. Don't give me a whole bunch of reasons for why it doesn't work. Tell me what you're going to do to make it work. Because here's the reality. When our kids are failing, especially for marginalized students, when they leave out of this building, if they don't get a high school diploma, if they don't know how to read, you know what happens? They end up in modern day slavery, which is the prison system, or they end up getting killed in the streets. So sorry, Miss Teacher, if I'm making you feel uncomfortable, but maybe this is not the organization for you to work at because I have an expectation that's here. Are you making phone calls? Are you doing formative assessments? Are your lesson plans culturally proficient and relevant? Are you talking about things that actually make sense? Do the kids see value in this? Are you hitting multiple learning styles? Are you doing the job with fidelity and you care about the kids and making a difference? Because in the classes that happen like that, they get results. When teachers are actually pushing kids and holding them accountable, I see results. It's only the folks who want to do the bare minimum and the maximum, then that's when you have these conversations. These are low vibration, loser conversations, and I will empathize with you, but I'm going to then send you back into the world and say, here's where I'm holding you at a standard. Because if the kids are coming at 85% of the time and 90% of the time, because I looked at the hay,
So the A is not a problem. They're not disruptive. So the B is not a problem. So now we're coming to the C, and you're telling me they're not motivated, but they're in the building and they're coming. You're just not making them motivated, or you're not making curriculum come alive to them so that they can understand what's going on. So really, Mr. Teacher or Miss Teacher, falls back on your lap, because at the end of the day, you're not volunteering. You are getting a paycheck, and I need a return on investment.
And I think attendance is a huge one there too, because I would say most will say that they do not have an impact on attendance. The teacher, like, they don't show up. I can't do anything about it. Not my problem. And you're saying that is the teacher and the school's problem, or it's something that a school and a teacher can impact.
Yeah, of course. Listen to this. Take care of your teachers and your students and success will follow. Make teachers feel like champions when they walk in the door. Make them feel celebrated and loved. They will in turn create that same culture. Remember, principals have an indirect impact on student achievement. They're going to create that same culture for those students, and then you'll get success. You see, in school, we like to pretend like every business in the world does not have to deal with people coming into the door. How does this company bring customers into the door? How does Disney World bring customers into the door? Because there's some businesses that lost the art of bringing customers into the door and stakeholders into the door. And what happens, their doors ultimately close. Unfortunately for schools, we don't think about it as a business. We just say, well, I can't impact the student achievement. I can't do nothing. I got no help. I'm hopeless. But that's not true. If you make kids feel seen, valued, and loved, I promise you they're going to come to class. We all went to that teacher's class that held us accountable and loved us. I can still tell you who my sixth grade teacher is. I can tell you who my teachers are who made an impact on me, because those are the folks I came into that class, I sat down, I learned, I felt engaged, and I said, man, this is good stuff. And some of the teachers who didn't care, who was lazy, who were lethargic with their behaviors and practices, I didn't feel a need to go to their classroom. I had a teacher one time, he said, Dr. Abraham, I don't know what you want me to do. My kids are always coming in late and they're not here. And so, again, we look at student attendance and teacher attendance. I said, well, you teach juniors, and juniors have the second highest attendance in our building. But here's the problem. You have, as a teacher, one of the lowest attendance in our building. And then when I actually do walkthroughs in your classroom, you're starting 15 minutes late. He said, well, I start 15 minutes late because the kids are coming in late. I said, so the kids are training you to start late so that then you start late? I said, no, you start fast and then they will come up to the standard that you are holding. See, if I did not know the data, then when he says this to me, I feel powerless. I have nothing to rebut that with. But because I'm intimately aware of what the quantifiable data tells me, I can be able to have a real conversation to say, no, you're not coming to school. Your attendance is about 65% because you're getting ready to retire. Number two, you're starting every class. You're missing 15 minutes of instructional time and you're starting slow. You have to fix those two things, and I promise your data will move. He retired.
He retired. Yeah. Sometimes we have a detraction.
Something that I've heard as a through that I really think, because we were talking indirect and direct messaging. Dr. Abraham, as you've been sharing just these wealth nuggets about culture in school, you've also been dropping little nuggets about your first year as a principal versus the later parts of principal, and even the pitfalls of either lack of love, lack of knowing data, lack of something that resulted in an angry teacher because she didn't feel the love when she was called out publicly about the 30% rate. You didn't call her by name, but she knew it was her. She felt the other people knew it was her, and it caused her an issue and you an issue, right? You also talk about teacher that's bordering retirement, kind of slacking off a little bit. Like, I don't start my class on time and I'm not here a lot. And I think it's the kids, right? The blaming. Tell us a little bit about the teachers, because what I've seen in our work and what I've experienced as a principal over years and years is that the data also shows us that we have fewer teachers that are not doing anything on the way to retire, like have given up. We have fewer teachers that are like, it's only these kids. The majority of our teachers show up every day. They're there every day, giving everything, wanting to help the kids, caring about them greatly, struggling and working through the struggle because they want to do the best job for our students. They want to see results. They want to grow in their craft. They want to see success personally as a teacher and see the kids see success. And they're still struggling. What do we say to those teachers? Because our data across the country says we do have a teacher shortage, but we also have a bulk of teachers that are continuing to show up every single day to do the work, and the work is still hard.
I don't know any of those teachers. They'd never come to work. No,
Exactly.
no. I always said at the principals, I say, listen, no matter what school I go to, and I was in Detroit the other day, and I said that to the staff. I said, listen, every time I come here, you guys are here. It's not a question of, do you care about the kids? I know you care, not because of what you say, because I see you here. I don't have to look for you. Every time I say, well, where's this teacher? They're still there. Yeah, they're still here. Majority of the teachers care about their kids. And it's what you said, Coach. It's a fall off between will and skill. So what I tell the teachers and people who might be feeling a little frustrated is, number one, before the paycheck, before the union contract and all that stuff, there's a reason why you got into this wonderful profession that we love. There's a reason why you got into this work. Remind yourself of that reason and remind yourself of, I'm doing this because I care and I want to make an impact in my community. That's number one. That has to be the well that you sip from every single day to keep you driven, or that's the oxygen mask you put on your face to give you breath every single day to do this real heartfelt, hard work that we have to do. Number two, use formative assessments to get a clear understanding of, do the students actually know what I was actually trying to provide for them in this instructional piece, right? Because the more formative assessments you do, the more data you have to then move your instruction and direction to get the kids to actually understand and conceptualize the work that needs to be done. Number three, make sure that you are spending a significant amount of time looking at your lesson plans and letting those formative assessments tweak and drive your lesson plans on a daily basis so that you're providing the best instructional opportunities for your students as possible. Number four, and I see this happen, a quiet classroom does not mean a good classroom. Just because the kids are sitting down and they're just quietly listening to you does not mean that they're actually understanding. Have higher order questioning strategies that you plan out so that kids can actually get engaged in the conversation. When I walk into a classroom, the best classrooms is I'm hearing kids having real intellectual conversations about what's happening, and they're excited about the lesson. The next one, share the sugar. You don't have to be the one speaking for 45, 50 minutes. Create an opportunity in groups to let our students actually lead the conversation and lead the instruction.
I think this sort of to summarize your last point is, if you create a culture of learning, right? Culture of love, culture of knowing the data, culture of celebration, all of that is a culture of learning. That's what equals the love, right? Because that's your business. And that's what your show. So when teachers see learning happening in their classroom, like genuinely can feel it and see it, they want to show up for work. And so the kids want to show up to school. The kids don't come to school when they feel there's something going on in their class.
Right.
Like, what's the point? If they feel like there's a point to being in class, at a genuine learning, not just doing work, not like we're doing work, but actually they're going to learn something. I don't want to miss it. That will increase attendance, is what you're saying. And it's not necessarily celebrations or rewards for top attendance or pizza parties. When they actually feel like they're learning something meaningful, they'll show up too. So the ABCs will happen when that happens in your classes.
And I do want to say this last point. Principals, when you're trying to drive your data and you created an initiative, it is important for you to examine the data to see if the initiative that you created actually was successful. Did you actually move the needle for that chronic absenteeism? Did you move the needle for that 20%? Or did it stay stagnant? Because if it stayed stagnant, it could have been you didn't market it right, you didn't get it out to the kids that it needed to get to, or the kids just didn't like the idea that you came up with and it didn't mean anything to them. So if you're going to always be thinking in a business term, ROI, return on investment, what is my return on investment for everything that I put in place? All of my staff, most times principals, if you really think about all the salaries in your building, we're running a multi-million-dollar school. And with all of the salaries there, what is the return on investment? We running a multi-million-dollar corporation and then only getting small gains? Because if that's the case, there's really some work that we need to do. And like I said, and what Coach Williams said, it's possible. This work is possible. It's not an impossible feat. It can happen if you put the right strategies in place.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abraham. I've learned a lot today. I have a real good perspective when I think about culture and talking to leaders, and everything you said relating to leaders could be related to teachers and students. It starts at the top, but it goes all the way through to everyone on board. And that makes a cultural shift. So thank you for joining us today. We can't wait to hear you at our summer conference as a featured presenter. I'm sure people will hear these things as well as multiple other ideas and strategies and concepts. And thank you, Erin, for joining us in this conversation and giving us your insights. And thank you, Ashley Shaw, for producing this episode. We'll see everyone next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. SREB is a nonprofit dedicated to improving education from pre-K all the way to PhD and into the workforce. Visit sreb.org for resources on instructional practices, teacher data, career pathways, and more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at SREB-School Improvement and on Twitter/X and Instagram, both at SREB Education. See you next week.